is in charge here? Answer me.
We are. This is our wedding reception.
Show me proof you're supposed to be here.
Officer, this is our venue. We paid for it.
Don't lie to me, people. Like you don't belong in a place like this.
Officer, identify your legal basis immediately.
The wedding was supposed to be perfect. Jasmine stood in her flowing white gown, every seam and bead carefully placed, her smile radiant as Derek adjusted his crisp black tuxedo. Outside, Magnolia Gardens glowed under the soft evening lights, guests mingling with glasses of champagne in hand. The jazz quartet played gently in the background and laughter filled the air. This was the moment they had dreamed about for years. Everything seemed flawless. Until a patrol car rolled up, its lights cutting through the serenity of their special day. "Where are you watching this from?" Jasmine's sister asked, setting up a live stream on her phone. "If you're seeing this, please subscribe before we continue. You don't want to miss what happens next. It's unbelievable." At 8:37 p.m., Officer Robert Hayes stepped out of the vehicle. Hayes had been a police officer for 12 years, and he had a reputation for taking his authority seriously, sometimes too seriously. But nobody at Magnolia Gardens suspected that Hayes would ruin the night in a way that would be replayed millions of times online. He didn't speak to the venue coordinator first. He didn't ask to see permits or event contracts. He walked straight toward Jasmine and Derek, his hand hovering near his belt, the badge gleaming, his posture aggressive. "I'm in charge here," Hayes barked, his voice cutting through the music. Derek blinked, confused. "We are. This is our wedding reception." "Show me proof you're supposed to be here," Hayes demanded, his eyes narrowing. Jasmine took a breath, trying to remain calm. "Officer, this is our venue. We paid for it." Hayes laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Don't lie to me. People like you don't belong in a place like this." The words hung in the air, absurd and cruel. Guests froze. Phones were raised, cameras capturing the unfolding nightmare from multiple angles. Michael, Derek's cousin, had been filming candid moments all evening and now had the officer in frame. "Officer, identify your legal basis immediately," Derek said, keeping his voice steady. Hayes scoffed. "I don't need a reason. You're being investigated. Step aside or face removal." Jasmine's grandmother, leaning on her cane, looked up with quiet disbelief. "What illegal activity are you talking about?" she asked. Hayes had no answer. None. There was no disturbance. No unruly guests. No loud music beyond the soft jazz playing in the ballroom. All that existed in Magnolia Gardens that night was a black couple celebrating their love, and a police officer determined to assert dominance. The venue coordinator, Emma, finally rushed over, her hands shaking. "Sir, this is a private event. They booked months ago. Everything is legal and confirmed." Hayes barely glanced at her, his attention fixed entirely on Derek and Jasmine. "I said step back. I'm doing my job." Derek pulled out his phone. "I'm recording this," he said. "Put that away," Hayes barked, taking a step closer. "I have the right to record a public official performing their duties in public," Derek said calmly, refusing to back down. Jasmine stepped in, her voice trembling but firm. "Officer, what do you need from us to resolve this?" "There's no misunderstanding here," Hayes replied. "I have the authority to remove anyone I deem necessary." The threat was unmistakable. Guests whispered among themselves, tension rising like smoke in a crowded room. Several of Derek's friends, including prominent lawyers and doctors, exchanged glances and quietly positioned themselves closer to the couple. They weren't going to let this harassment continue. Then came the line that would define the night and ultimately cost Hayes his career. "People like you don't belong here," Hayes said, pointing at Derek and Jasmine. "I know you didn't pay for this legitimately." Gasps filled the room. Phones shook as guests recorded, The live stream exploded with viewers, and comments flew in, condemning the officer's behavior. The implications were clear. A uniformed officer had openly questioned the legitimacy of a black couple enjoying their own wedding. Dr. Monique Fields, a pediatric surgeon and Jasmine's mentor, stepped forward. "Sir, I know Jasmine. This is a legitimate event. Your actions are completely inappropriate." "Mind your business," Hayes snapped. Judge Leonard Davis, Derek's father and a retired federal judge, approached, his calm presence commanding attention. "Officer, this is a private wedding. You have no legal grounds here. Articulate charges or leave." Hayes sneered. "I don't care about your titles. I'm the authority here. Comply or face arrest." Guests exchanged silent signals. Phones were raised, and Derek's cousin, Michael, kept recording. A circle began to form, a protective barrier of lawyers, doctors, and business leaders linking arms around the couple. The message was clear. Nobody would be intimidated. Emma, the coordinator, finally convinced Hayes to glance at the contracts, permits, and insurance certificates she had brought. He barely looked, dismissing them as irrelevant. The live stream now had thousands of viewers. Local news stations began dispatching crews to the venue. Hayes had no idea that he was becoming a national story in real time. Dr. Fields called her hospital's legal department while Judge Davis positioned himself strategically, making it impossible for Hayes to escalate further without witnesses documenting every move. Hayes realized, slowly, that this wasn't a simple noise complaint anymore. His arrogance, pride, and history of racial bias were about to catch up with him. And the world was watching. Then Derek and Jasmine shared a brief glance, eyes locking in a moment of shared resilience. Despite the fear, humiliation, and threat of arrest, they refused to cower. Their guests, friends, and family stood beside them, forming an unbreakable shield of support. The wedding that had begun as a celebration of love had turned into a public confrontation with injustice, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. Where are you watching this from? Comment below. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because the next chapter will show exactly how the guests and couple turned a nightmare into a battle for justice that would shock the city. The tension in the ballroom was electric. Phones were raised, live streams were rolling, and every guest had become an involuntary witness to one officer's blind prejudice. Hayes stood in the middle of the circle, his hands still near his belt, jaw tight, breathing fast. Derek's parents, a retired federal judge and a prominent businesswoman, flanked him, while doctors, lawyers, and friends held their positions, forming a barrier Hayes couldn't ignore. "You are all interfering with law enforcement," Hayes shouted, trying to regain control. His voice was loud enough to echo off the chandeliers, but it didn't intimidate anyone. Instead, it drew more attention and more cameras. Derek stepped forward cautiously, his voice calm but firm. "Officer, we've done nothing wrong. This is our wedding. People have paid to be here. We have proof of everything. You have no legal basis to remove us." Hayes smirked, but it was the kind of smirk that hid panic. "You're obstructing me. Step aside. I can arrest anyone who refuses." A murmur ran through the crowd. Several guests pulled out phones and started recording in higher resolution, while others quietly called lawyers. Derek's best man, Onder, whispered to a few of the guests, ensuring someone on each side had direct lines to attorneys ready to intervene. Hayes had expected compliance, but he faced an organized group of people who were ready to fight back. Dr. Monique Fields moved closer to Hayes, holding her hospital ID. "Sir, I am a licensed physician. I've known Jasmine for years. You are threatening people with arrest at a private event. Step back, or you are committing a violation of civil rights right here in front of witnesses." Hayes scoffed, leaning forward as if to intimidate her. "You don't know what's happening here. I'm in charge, and this is my call." Jasmine's hand tightened around Derek's. Her voice, calm but tinged with anger, cut through the tension. You are harassing us at our wedding. You don't get to decide who belongs here. We have done nothing wrong. Hayes' face flushed red. I know people like you can't afford a place like this legitimately. Step aside, or I will remove you. The words were venomous, dripping with racial bias. Every guest now understood the stakes. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was blatant discrimination. Several of the lawyers in attendance moved closer, clearly preparing to intervene legally if Hayes tried to touch anyone. Then Judge Leonard Davis, Derek's father, stepped forward with measured authority. Officer Hayes, you are now witnessing potential civil rights violations. If you continue this harassment, you are personally liable. You can either leave this venue immediately or face the consequences. Hayes took a step back, but only slightly. Pride and arrogance still controlled his actions. I don't care who you are. I have the authority here. Step aside, or I will arrest someone. Anyone. It was the moment Derek had been preparing for internally. He raised his phone and started recording live, narrating calmly for the audience streaming online. This is our wedding reception. Officer Hayes is threatening to remove us and our guests without cause. Everyone here has proof we are allowed to be in this venue. Hayes' eyes narrowed. Put that phone down. No, Derek replied, voice steady. I have the right to record you. This is public space. You're on camera. Your words and actions are being documented. The tension escalated further when Emma, the venue coordinator, arrived with a thick folder containing every legal document. Contracts, permits, insurance certificates, everything Hayes needed to see. Sir, I assure you, everything is fully legal. They booked this venue months ago. There are no complaints. This is a legitimate wedding. Hayes barely glanced at the folder, his attention still fixed on the couple. I said step back. Now. Derek's cousin Michael, filming from a better angle, zoomed in on Hayes as he said the words no one would forget. People like you don't belong here. I know you didn't pay for this. Gasps spread through the room. Phones shook as the live stream exploded in viewers. Comments poured in, outrage, disbelief, condemnation. This was not just harassment. It was a public declaration of prejudice by someone sworn to uphold the law. Dr. Fields pulled out her phone and called the hospital's legal department. We have a police officer threatening wedding guests without cause, she said, loudly enough for Hayes to hear. I'm documenting everything, and legal action will be taken immediately. Hayes' face darkened. He realized his words were being broadcast, that any aggressive move would be captured and possibly result in criminal charges. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. Hang up the phone. I'm in control here, he barked. Not happening, Dr. Fields replied. Judge Davis positioned himself between Hayes and the group of guests. Officer, any physical contact with anyone here will be considered assault under color of law. Step aside. Hayes hesitated. His aggression wavered, but only for a moment. His mind raced. This wasn't the typical noise complaint he was used to. Every guest present had the knowledge, authority, and documentation to hold him accountable. And everyone was recording. Finally, after a tense pause, Hayes took a step back, muttering under his breath. Derek and Jasmine held hands, the guests maintaining their protective circle. Emma, the coordinator, exhaled in relief as she ensured the couple remained surrounded by people ready to intervene if necessary. In that moment, a local news crew arrived. Reporter Lisa Thompson, veteran journalist, immediately began interviewing guests and streaming the scene live. We are at Magnolia Gardens, she reported, where a police officer has confronted a black couple at their wedding reception. Multiple witnesses say this appears to be an instance of harassment based on race. Hayes noticed the cameras and realized the situation had spun beyond his control. The threat of public exposure, lawsuits, and internal investigation now outweighed his desire to assert authority. He reluctantly retreated toward his patrol car, but not before leaning toward Derek and whispering a threat. "This isn't over. People like you need to remember their place." Every word was captured on multiple devices. Guests exchanged stunned looks. This was no longer about a wedding. It was about civil rights, abuse of power, and accountability. By 9:15 p.m., Hayes was in his patrol car fuming. The crowd remained in place, their phones recording, live streams rolling, and social media exploding with outrage. The hashtag #WeddingWhileBlack began trending locally, rapidly spreading nationwide. Derek and Jasmine were shaken, but their resolve strengthened. They realized the magnitude of what had just happened. This wasn't just a personal affront. It was a chance to hold someone accountable, to shine a light on racial injustice captured on camera. Judge Davis gathered the male guests discreetly and advised them. Document everything, contact lawyers, and don't let anyone intimidate them. Dr. Fields and other professionals formed a protective network, ensuring Derek and Jasmine were safe for the remainder of the night. Everyone understood that what had started as a nightmare could turn into a historic moment for justice. Jasmine and Derek shared a quiet, intense moment in the middle of the circle. She whispered, "We can't let this ruin us. We fight back, together." Derek nodded. "We've got witnesses, cameras, lawyers. We're not alone. We end this the right way." The couple's first dance would still happen, but it would be more than a celebration. It would be a statement. Against injustice, against intimidation, against the belief that success and joy are privileges that some people have the right to police. The live feed continued. Viewers watched as a couple's wedding day became a turning point, as a single officer's arrogance was confronted by a united community. And while Hayes fumed in his car, the people inside Magnolia Gardens were already planning their next steps. Legal action, public exposure, and ensuring that no one would ever forget what had happened that night. The nightmare had passed, at least physically, but the battle for justice had only just begun. By sunrise the morning after the wedding, Derek and Jasmine were awake in their hotel suite, but there was no time for room service or quiet reflection. Their phones buzzed constantly. Lawyers, civil rights organizations, local media outlets, and even strangers from across the country were reaching out, all reacting to the shocking footage from Magnolia Gardens. The hashtag #WeddingWhileBlack had gone viral overnight. Millions had watched a uniformed officer openly harass a black couple at their wedding. The public outrage was immediate and intense. Jasmine's phone rang first. It was attorney Sarah Williams calling from her office. "Jasmine, Derek, the evidence is overwhelming. We've seen the footage. Multiple angles, eyewitnesses, threats on record. Hayes has no defense. This is a clear civil rights violation. We can file criminal charges, and the civil suit will be solid. You're in a very strong position." Derek rubbed his eyes, still wearing the tuxedo jacket from the night before. "I just want to understand how one man could do this. In front of all those people and still think he's in the right." Sarah's voice was calm but firm. "It's not about right. It's about power, prejudice, and arrogance. And now, because of all the cameras and witnesses, his actions are going to have consequences. We need to move quickly." By 9:00 a.m., the couple met with the first group of lawyers in the hotel lobby. Judge Leonard Davis, still calm but visibly determined, was there, coordinating the legal strategy. "We have documentation, dozens of credible witnesses, and videos that show explicit racial bias. We're going to build this case methodically, step by step. Hayes' career is over, and we'll make sure the law reflects that." At the same time, local news crews descended on Magnolia Gardens. Reporter Lisa Thompson was live on air, showing crowds of viewers the footage from the night before. Her words were precise, fact-driven, and damning. A black couple celebrating their wedding at Magnolia Gardens was confronted by a police officer who threatened arrest and made discriminatory statements. The incident has sparked outrage across the city and drawn national attention. Meanwhile, Hayes was in his patrol car, reviewing the same videos everyone else had seen. His colleagues whispered among themselves, some expressing disbelief, others avoiding eye contact. Hayes knew that his supervisor would not be pleased. He also knew that Officer Maria Gonzalez, his partner, had remained in the car the entire evening and witnessed the harassment, but had done nothing to intervene. That inaction would also be scrutinized. By late morning, Derek and Jasmine held a press conference outside the courthouse. Standing together, they faced dozens of cameras. Jasmine spoke first, her voice steady, resonant, and filled with emotion. This is supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. Instead, we were humiliated, threatened, and treated like criminals in front of our family, friends, and colleagues. What happened yesterday is not just an isolated incident. It reflects the prejudice and discrimination too many people face every day. Derek followed, his tone calm but powerful. We were doing nothing wrong. We had every legal right to be at Magnolia Gardens. And yet, a police officer threatened us and our guests purely because of the color of our skin. We are fortunate to have witnesses, cameras, and the support of our community. Many people don't have that. This is why we are committed to holding Officer Hayes accountable, not just for us, but for anyone who could face similar abuse. The press conference was broadcast live, shared millions of times online, and ignited conversations across social media platforms. Civil rights organizations immediately offered support. Lawyers reached out, offering pro bono services. Hospital administrators, architectural associations, and professional networks publicly condemned Hayes' actions. By mid-afternoon, the city's mayor, David Thompson, held an emergency meeting with the police chief, department leadership, and city attorneys. He was furious, but calculated. "This cannot be allowed to fester," he said. "The videos are everywhere. Public trust is already damaged. Hayes' actions were indefensible. Begin internal investigations immediately and prepare for legal consequences. I want transparency and swift action." The police department released a brief statement. Hayes was on administrative leave pending investigation, and his actions did not reflect departmental standards. But the public response was far from appeased. Social media exploded with anger. Hashtag Justice for Derek and Jasmine joined hashtag Wedding While Black, trending nationwide. People demanded accountability, not vague statements. Hayes' name and face were everywhere. By evening, Derek and Jasmine were in the offices of Williams and Associates, reviewing their legal options. Sarah Williams laid out the first steps. "We file a civil rights lawsuit against Hayes personally, as well as the police department for failing to address prior complaints against him. Federal authorities will likely get involved. The evidence is clear. Your case could set a precedent." Jasmine shook her head, exhausted but resolute. "All of this, over our wedding. I keep replaying it in my head. The fear, the humiliation. I never imagined something so personal could become so public." Derek held her hand. "We have to turn it into something bigger. We can't let this happen to anyone else. And we've already seen how powerful the cameras and witnesses were. We fight back, we make change." Meanwhile, Officer Hayes realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. His union initially tried to defend him, but after reviewing the footage, even they knew he was indefensible. By the end of the first 24 hours, Hayes' career was effectively over. Public pressure forced the Internal Affairs investigation to move faster than anyone expected. They pulled his entire personnel file and discovered 6 previous complaints. each involving harassment or bias against black citizens. All had been dismissed or ignored. At the same time, federal authorities, including the FBI Civil Rights Division, opened an inquiry. Hayes' statements, captured on multiple devices, met the threshold for criminal investigation under federal civil rights law. The story quickly became national news. A black couple harassed at their wedding by a police officer, documented and undeniable, with witnesses and video proving every moment. By nightfall, Derek and Jasmine were finally alone in their hotel suite for a brief moment. Exhausted, they sat side by side, reflecting on the whirlwind. Jasmine whispered, "We've turned our wedding nightmare into something that could change lives. But it's terrifying. I don't know how I'll sleep again knowing this officer could have ruined everything." Derek squeezed her hand. "We'll get through it. We have the law on our side, witnesses, cameras, and a community ready to fight with us. Hayes made a huge mistake, and the world is watching. We can't let this fear control us. We make it our power." By midnight, social media campaigns were fully mobilized. Civil rights groups organized events, hospitals, and professional networks posted statements of support, and even major businesses weighed in, condemning Hayes' actions. The couple had unintentionally become symbols of resistance, standing against racial discrimination and abuse of authority. And as the first legal documents were prepared for submission to the federal court, one fact was undeniable. Hayes had underestimated the power of documentation, witnesses, and public attention. His threats at a wedding had ignited a firestorm that would not die until justice was served. The federal courtroom was packed. Cameras were allowed in the back, and reporters crowded every hallway. Derek and Jasmine sat in the front row, hands tightly clasped. This was no longer about a wedding or humiliation. It was about justice. Officer Robert Hayes, once a man who believed his authority was untouchable, now faced the consequences of his actions. The prosecution opened with a detailed recount of the night at Magnolia Gardens. On August 15th, the lead attorney began. Officer Hayes confronted a black couple at their wedding reception without cause. Multiple witnesses and video evidence showed he threatened arrests, made racially biased statements, and harassed not only the couple but also all their guests. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of pens scribbling notes. Hayes sat stone-faced, fidgeting slightly. He glanced at his defense attorney, who avoided eye contact with the cameras recording the trial. Every frame of video from the wedding played repeatedly on the monitors. Hayes' words, his threats, and the reactions of the guests. His argument that he was just doing his job sounded hollow, even in the courtroom. Derek's cousin Michael was called to testify first. "I was filming the entire reception," he said calmly. When Hayes arrived, there was no disturbance. The guests were behaving properly. He targeted Derek and Jasmine, made discriminatory comments, and threatened to remove them without any legal basis. Everything was caught on video. Next, the venue coordinator, Emma, provided her testimony. The couple had paid for this venue months in advance. There was no complaint. Hayes refused to look at the documents proving the wedding was legitimate. He focused solely on the couple, treating them as though they were trespassing. It was blatant harassment. The prosecution then called Dr. Monique Fields. Her calm, authoritative voice carried weight. "I've known Jasmine for years. She is an exemplary professional. What Hayes did was unprovoked and discriminatory. His actions put my friend and her guests in fear and humiliation on a day that should have celebrated love, not prejudice." Hayes' defense attorney tried to argue that he had received a noise complaint and was following procedure. But when confronted with video evidence showing the music volume, the polite behavior of guests, and the absence of any disturbance, the claim crumbled. Hayes himself was called to the stand, and it was disastrous. "Officer Hayes," the prosecutor began, "explain why you told Derek and Jasmine that people like you don't belong here." Hayes shifted uncomfortably. I was following protocol. I was investigating a complaint. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to what? The prosecutor pressed. You said it on record, in front of witnesses, and it was captured on multiple cameras. Do you deny saying it? Hayes swallowed hard. No, I said it. But... No, but... The prosecutor cut in. You threatened a bride and groom at their wedding. You ignored proof of their booking and harassed guests, all because of their race. That is the definition of a civil rights violation. The courtroom murmured. Even Hayes' defense team looked uneasy. The evidence was undeniable. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was clear: guilty on all charges. Violating civil rights, assault under color of law, and threats against citizens. Derek and Jasmine felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Their nightmare had finally led to accountability. The sentencing hearing followed. Judge Margaret Foster, known for her firm but fair rulings, spoke directly to Hayes. Your actions represent a profound betrayal of public trust. You targeted innocent people because of their race, threatened them in their home and their private event, and displayed arrogance in the face of overwhelming evidence. Your conduct will not be tolerated. Hayes received the maximum sentence allowed: 3 years in federal prison, restitution to Derek and Jasmine, and a permanent ban from law enforcement. His career, reputation, and pension were gone. The man who once wielded authority as a badge of pride now faced a future defined by accountability. Meanwhile, the city agreed to settle the civil lawsuit before trial. The terms were historic. $1.8 million to Derek and Jasmine, the largest police misconduct payout in the city's history. The settlement was more than financial compensation. It was a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, a rare victory for victims of racial profiling and abuse of authority. The couple used part of the settlement to establish a foundation supporting victims of police misconduct, particularly those who lacked resources and connections. Their goal was clear: ensure others could access legal representation and support that Derek and Jasmine had fortunately had. The police department underwent significant restructuring. Supervisors who had ignored Hayes' previous complaints were demoted or transferred. New policies required immediate investigation of racial profiling complaints and mandatory reporting of officer misconduct. Officers were required to attend enhanced civil rights training. The system, which had failed for over a decade, was forced to change because one couple refused to accept injustice. Social media continued to play a crucial role. #Justice for Derek and Jasmine remained trending for weeks. Celebrities, civil rights organizations, and ordinary citizens alike amplified the story. Community events celebrated the couple's courage, not just in surviving harassment, but in actively confronting it. The wedding guests who had formed that protective circle remained close, a living reminder of solidarity and accountability. Derek and Jasmine finally took their delayed honeymoon, but even then, the events of that night stayed with them. They had experienced fear, humiliation, and injustice, but they had also witnessed the power of evidence, witnesses, and community. They emerged not only victorious, but determined to ensure that other families could be protected from similar abuse. Months later, the foundation they created began offering scholarships, legal aid, and workshops on civil rights. Their story became part of educational programs and community initiatives nationwide. The wedding that almost ended in tragedy became a case study in courage, preparation, and standing up against discrimination. The legacy was undeniable. Officer Hayes lost everything because of his arrogance and prejudice. Derek and Jasmine gained something far greater than money or publicity. They gained justice, closure, and the ability to turn personal trauma into meaningful change. Their wedding, once nearly destroyed, had sparked reform, national attention, and a clear message: hatred and abuse of authority have consequences. As Derek and Jasmine stood together at a community event 6 months later, they reflected on the journey. Jasmine whispered, "We turned pain into purpose. That night could have broken us. Instead, it made us stronger." Derek nodded, looking out at the crowd of supporters. "And we'll keep fighting, not just for us, but for anyone who faces injustice without witnesses or cameras." Our story shows that standing up, documenting, and having the courage to fight back can change things.